Darkseid didn't kill everyone. Some...
And my teammates. I won't forgive.
Today is a little guy who goes by the name Dr. Psycho. Now, Wonder Woman, being a warrior-bound Amazon, sometimes daughter of Zeus, is one tough lady, and as you'd expect, a good chunk of her opponents are equally, if not more, physically intimidating and pack one heck of a punch. And then there's Dr. Psycho. Dr. Psycho is not physically intimidating at all. He is 3'9" with no kind of super strength. But what Dr. Psycho lacks in physicality, he makes up for in being absolutely psychotic, but also one of the strongest telepaths on the planet. Psycho can match up to Martian Manhunter in terms of his telepathic prowess, and can control multiple different minds with his powers at the same time. On top of that, he is just so incredibly sadistic. When combined with that absolute power, he can cause a bad day for even someone as capable as Wonder Woman. And before we move on, I'm curious, who are your favorite underappreciated villains in not just comics, but in any form of media? Let me know down in the comments below. But next up on the docket for today is Lord Deathman. The Japanese crime boss known as Lord Deathman has battled Batman both in American comics and in Japanese manga, using his powers to seemingly overcome death itself, able to rise from the grave no matter what his injuries are. In his first appearance in Batman 180 in May 1966, he passed away 3 times using a yogi technique to appear passed away before the final conflict, which saw him actually get struck by lightning and go on to the pearly gates. But since then, he has actually gained the real power to come back from the grave, but at the cost of having a bare bones skull for a head. His regenerative abilities are so powerful that his fluids are used to create the infamous Lazarus pits that Ra's al Ghul uses to stay young and immortal. One of the first ways Batman defeated Lord Deathman with his new powers is honestly a little out of character for the Crusader. He threw Lord Deathman off of a building into the path of an armored car, which took the criminal down just long enough for Catwoman to lock him in a safe, and then he was shot out into space, and he still somehow came back.
Number 10. Circe. Circe was a woman in ancient Greece whose beauty was apparently unparalleled. She married a wealthy prince, but he was a brutish, cruel drunk who she viewed as an animal, so she killed him before eventually coming into contact with the goddess of witchcraft, Hecate, who granted her 1/5 of her soul, which made her a master of magic capable of imposing her will and power on others. After Circe sold her soul, she became obsessed with regaining it from the dimension of hell where it had been sent. She is willing to do anything and sacrifice anyone to try and regain what she has lost. She is known for turning men into animals that serve as her minions, and has magic powers which allow her to open portals and teleport or give life to inanimate objects. She has geokinesis, the ability to possess people, as well as the ability to freeze time to pull herself and others out of a moment. She is a constant thorn in Wonder Woman's side and a constant source of chaos in the DC universe. Number 9. Black Adam. Teth Adam was a member of the Kandaki tribe in ancient Egypt, whose people were forced into servitude by a cruel pharaoh of the time. Most of his family was killed, but Teth Adam was able to escape with his nephew Amun when the wizard Shazam brought them to the Rock of Eternity to make Amun his chosen champion. Amun learned that he could share his powers with Adam, and the two returned to free their people. Amun wanted to find a peaceful solution, but Adam felt that peace was not an option and wanted revenge, so he killed his nephew in order to gain his power for his own. In the present day of the DC universe, he is the ruler of Kandak, and sometimes a member of super teams like the Justice Society. He flip-flops between being an anti-hero and a straight-up villain, but the fact that he once started World War III and murdered millions of innocent civilians makes me more than comfortable putting him on a villain's list. His enchantment from the wizard Shazam has granted him the strength of Shu, the speed of Horus, the strength of Amun, the wisdom of Zahudi, the power of Aten, and the courage of Mehen. This gives him super strength, speed, flight, and lightning casting abilities, which makes him capable of taking out most of the heroes of the DC universe with ease. The only people who seem to be able to consistently stop him are Shazam, who has pretty much the same powers, and of course, Superman. Number 8. The Reverse Flash. There is some variation on the origins of the Reverse Flash depending on the continuity you are looking at, but usually he is a man from the 25th century called Eobard Thawne, who develops a fascination with the Flash. He works for years on studying studying the Speed Force until he eventually manages to replicate the accident that gave Barry Allen his superpowers and tries to become a hero himself. Because his time period doesn't have much need for heroes, he causes incidents that he can then solve himself. He eventually became friends with the Flash, but once Flash became aware of his true nature, he turned Thawne away and he became the Reverse Flash. Reverse Flash wants to gain his friend's respect and become an integral part of his history, so he traveled through time to mess with Barry's life, doing rather minor things like tripping him on the stairs when he was a kid and going to such extremes as killing his mother in front of him as a child. Reverse Flash's ability to manipulate the timeline makes him almost unstoppable, as if someone gets in his way, he simply travels through time and erases them from existence, as he did to his own brother, Roburn. Due to him being so weaved throughout history, Barry can't even stop him without risking creating an alternate timeline, as when he prevented Reverse Flash from killing Nora Allen and accidentally created the dystopian Flashpoint timeline. Even when Barry does manage to kill Thawne, because he is so connected to the negative Speed Force, he is always brought back before long. Number 7. Doomsday. In the ancient Kryptonian days, a scientist wanted to create the ultimate life form. He accomplished this by sending a baby onto the planet's surface and waiting for either the elements or the creatures of the planet to, let's say, help the baby buy the farm. He would then take whatever remains were left and clone the baby to create a stronger clone, effectively forcing evolution to create the most brutal and effective creature possible. After decades of this process, Doomsday was born. Doomsday is nearly impossible to defeat, being essentially invulnerable and super strong. If you do manage to hurt him, he has a powerful healing factor that will almost immediately undo the damage. If you manage to kill him, he not only comes back to life, but will be evolved to resist damage from whatever hurt him before. He is an unstoppable force that only gets better at fighting you each time. When he first came to Earth, he was able to tear through the entire Justice League with them barely slowing him down, and the only person on Earth capable of standing up to him was Superman. Superman was eventually able to kill Doomsday, but it took him having to not hold back at all, and even then, the effort killed him in the process as well. Number 6. Parallax. Parallax is a parasitic demon entity that is the embodiment of fear. He spent years traveling the galaxy, causing civilizations to destroy themselves out of paranoia until the Guardians of the Universe trapped Parallax in the Green Lantern's central power battery on the planet Oa for billions of years. This yellow fear demon living in the battery is the reason that for years Green Lanterns were unable to affect anything that was the color yellow. Parallax influenced the mind of Hal Jordan, making him more and more anxious and self-doubting until he was driven mad by the destruction of his home, Coast City. In an effort to try and restore his home, Hal went on a rampage, killing the entire Green Lantern Corps and destroying the central power battery, allowing Parallax to graft onto Hal's soul, causing him to start going by the name Parallax and acting as a villain until he was eventually killed. The Spectre then freed Hal's spirit from the demon. Despite the fact that he can be trapped, Parallax is the embodiment of an emotional concept, fear, and is therefore unable to be killed. Beyond that, he is also able to manipulate reality, being able to create and destroy new planets at will.
Number 10. Gorgon. If you remember the weirdest DC Multiverse Superheroes video, which you should check out, I talked about a pastiche of the Incredible Hulk in DC Comics called Big Baby from Earth 8. He was part of a team called the Retaliators, who were supposed to be a joke version of the Avengers. This universe also had a team of villains called the Extremists, and on that team was a Dr. Octopus type character named Gorgon. While Gorgon did utilize technological enhancements, I think his octopus likeness comes in the form of his prehensile hair. The hair tentacles he uses and his role as a scientist mixed with his weight and oddly familiar glasses all come together to really evoke a Dr. Octopus likeness, which is just weird enough to make me double take. He is also familiar enough that I can't really put him any higher on this list, so there's that. Number 9. Dex Star. Or Dexstar, or Dexter, or Dexstar, Dexstar. Cats can be ruthless, cold, and scary at times, I'll admit that. But while the Red Lantern of Sector 2814, Dexstar, is an irrationally rage-filled kitty, it's all because he loved his owner. Dexstar's origin shows the cat Dexter with his owner when she is attacked by robbers who broke into her home. While Dexter tried his best to scratch the attacker, he ended up ending the life of Dexter's owner. When the police showed up on the scene, Dexter was kicked out into the streets so as to not contaminate the scene. Now, two rascals from the streets found Dexter when he was trying to sleep, put him in a sack, and threw him into a river. Now that is one hell of a sequence of events, and all this happening filled the poor little kitty with enough rage that it caught the attention of Atrocitus, who called out to him and made him a Red Lantern. With this newfound power of the Red Lantern ring, the Rage Kitty exacted his sweet revenge on the hoodlums and flew to say goodbye to his owner one last time, saying, in his little cat language, "I find who hurt you, I kill. I, good kitty." I love this cat, but I also wouldn't dare mess with it. Ever. Number 8. Prometheus. Heroes and villains with no powers always seem to be some of the most powerful. It's strange. Take Prometheus. After seeing his criminal parents pass at the hands of police, he vows a vendetta on any form of justice. A vendetta that would push him to be able to defeat the whole Justice League single-handedly. He shot the Martian Manhunter with a dart that turned his power against him and set him on fire. He infected Steel's armor with a computer virus which commanded the suit to damage the Watchtower. He hypnotized the Huntress into unconsciousness. He attacked Green Lantern with a neural chaff that rendered his ring useless. He trapped the angel Zariel in limbo. He tricked the Flash into believing that he had planted motion-sensitive devices that would explode if the Flash used his powers. And he defeated Batman in hand-to-hand combat. That's probably the most nuts thing on this list. His origin is very similar to Batman's. After his parents were dispatched from the mortal plane, he would travel the globe training and becoming the ultimate combat machine. But he also attended the top universities, learning as much as he could. He eventually sets up a base in the Ghost Zone. And from here, he built an armor that could download information on any opponent's fighting style, kind of reminiscent of Taskmaster's ability. He is kind of crazy capable, and his vendetta on any kind of justice plus his Batman likeness just makes him kind of a little strange to me, but also terrifying. Number 7. Earth 17 Superman. On Earth 17, superheroes are a product of government experiments. The Superman of this universe, Overman, was the first, with the other superheroes being spawns of his DNA. Now that may be weird, but that ain't the weird part. He also doesn't really seem like a villain yet, does he? Well, after contracting a disease, you know, contracting a disease from another person, yes, like that kind of disease, he goes insane and destroys the Justice League and reduces his world to rubble. He then gets his filthy paws on a doomsday boom boom that he intends to use on Earth 17 and wipe it out. The Crisis on Infinite Earths destroyed this reality, just like DC tried to destroy such a naughty Superman story. Even having different iterations of Overmans who were different, like an Overman who became allied with the Axis powers in World War II. But the internet never forgets DC Comics, and people like me exist to remind everyone of the things you published into this world. I am sorry, sort of. Thanks for the content. Number 6. Mr. Mxyzptlk. Look, I talked about Batmite when discussing heroes, and he wasn't even really a hero. So how can I not mention the first 5th dimensional imp in this video? Plus he's got a fun name. Mr. Mxyzptlk is a reality warping imp obsessed with Superman, who, just like his rival Batmite did with Batman, simply seeks to annoy the hell out of Superman and just prove he is smarter than him. Which is good, because he has a level of power that in other hands could cause the entire end of the multiverse. More on that later though. He can do almost anything imaginable if he wishes it. And his only weakness really is being convinced or tricked into saying his name backwards to send him back to the 5th dimension, which, if you're trying to say it correctly, is honestly a superpower in and of itself. Clitopizixum. I got it. Mxyzptlk. Number 10. Doomsday. I have to just assume that Batman is afraid of Doomsday. And there are multiple reasons I believe this. For starters, anytime I've seen Batman even attempt to get involved in a fight with Doomsday, he is never throwing punches. He is either staying the heck out of the way, maybe only acting as a distraction, or he is powered up by some serious magical artifacts. Secondly, Batman is incredibly smart. He knows how hard it is for someone to take down Superman, and the fact that Doomsday is one of the few characters who is able to do it, and with such brutality, there is no way Batman is not intimidated by this monster. I refuse to believe it. Honestly, my favorite point of proof is seeing what Ben Affleck's Batman does in Batman vs Superman. Say what you want about that movie, but Batman jumping around the battlefield just trying his best to stay out of the way? Hilarious. Number 9. Prometheus. As a dramatic inversion of Batman, the tragic figure of Prometheus presents a serious threat to the Dark Knight. Enraged by the passing away of his parents at the hands of law enforcement, Prometheus vows to fight the law with the same intensity intensity that Batman seeks to uphold it. Backed by ludicrous sums of money, Prometheus trains diligently and becomes the bane of police officers and military men across America. Armed with an all-powerful helmet, Prometheus earns godlike powers that give him the strength of the best fighters on Earth. It's no wonder that when he breaks into the Justice League Watchtower, he single-handedly beats the majority of the team, and Batman takes the majority of that shellacking. Prometheus runs the Dark Knight into the ground. It was the first showdown between the two orphans, and Prometheus takes the victory without any effort at all. Hey, are you liking this video? Well, then hit that thumbs up button, rookie. We need your support. Number 8, Zsasz. Victor Zsasz has a character trait that a few others on this list possess. He's just completely and utterly insane. Zsasz scares Batman for one main reason. Whenever he is not locked up, it's almost guaranteed that lives will come to an end, which just ups the ante because every escape of this killer becomes a race against the clock for Batman. He needs to bring him down fast before he adds another scar to his body. Every single one of those scars signifies a failure for Batman. Zsasz is a man with absolutely no form of pity or morals, and he will never stop unless he passes away, but we know Batman will never do that. In an alternate story, Injustice, Zsasz is even responsible for the passing of Alfred Pennyworth, which was not supposed to happen, but because Zsasz is Zsasz, it did. Number 7, Thomas Wayne Batman. Other versions of Batman always have the potential to be a scary thought for our Batman, or anyone, really. But when that version of Batman is Bruce Wayne's own father, who completely destroys him emotionally, teams up with Bane, and is trying to stop Batman being Batman so he can have a normal life, it's an incredibly interesting idea for a character, honestly. But with all the daddy issues Batman has, for his alternate reality father to be so twisted and brutal has got to be a terrifying thought. But what did Thomas do that was so bad? Well, let me tell you. Alongside Bane, he ruined Batman and Catwoman's wedding, causing her to leave him at the altar, nearly had Batman send Mr. Freeze to the afterlife for a crime he did not commit, kidnapped Damian Wayne, hired the KG Beast to take out Dick Grayson, he had Bane put Alfred Pennyworth in the ground, then Thomas incapacitated Bruce with fear toxin and kidnapped him. He dug up the coffin of Martha Wayne, wishing to use the Lazarus Pit to resurrect Martha so that they could all be a happy family again. He went more than a little overboard is what I'm saying. Number 6, the Batman Who Laughs. Another version of Batman, only this time it's basically the ultimate evil version of himself. A Jokerized Bruce Wayne. He is just absolutely awful. He has all the smarts and skill of Batman himself, but the completely bonkers unpredictability of Joker. And this combo causes the Batman Who Laughs to become one of the biggest threats to the entire multiverse. Now, being a Jokerized Bruce Wayne, he has a few differences to the man himself. He's thinner and faster, but physically weaker. Unfortunately, physicality in battle with this guy doesn't really matter. He's got backup in the form of his Dark Knights, and he has backup plans on top of backup plans as any Batman worth his salt would have. This guy put his consciousness into a Batman with the power of Dr. Manhattan and destroyed Perpetua, the first creator of the multiverse and the mother of the Monitor, Anti-Monitor, and the World Forger. And at number 10, Riddler. Believe it or not, Batman has actually admitted that the Riddler is more intelligent than he is. Obviously, he is incredibly insane, but the Riddler has even realized this himself, which only expanded his intelligence. In terms of street-level villains, few can stand up to the intelligence of Riddler. Just like Batman himself, Riddler always has backup plans for his backup plans. He plays for most outcomes, but he usually sets traps and plans that are so well thought out that he doesn't always need his backup plans. And then, obviously, there's all the wordplay that he includes in his riddles that has even the most astute of readers rubbing their chins just trying to figure it out, you know? Number 9, Vandal Savage. When you think of intelligence, you don't often think of cavemen, but there is one caveman who can proudly make this list. Vandal Savage was alive 50,000 years ago as chief of a tribe of other cavemen, but when he came into contact with a strange meteorite, it exploded and bathed him in this strange alien radiation that gave him immunity to aging, disease, and fatigue, meaning he's effectively immortal. The meteorite also increased his intelligence to superhuman levels, which combined with 50,000 years of learning, experiencing, and living alongside every single technological innovation in the history of man, Vandal Savage possesses skills in almost all areas, even basically becoming immune to pain. But he specifically focuses on the tactical skills that would help him become a world conqueror. He never became. Number 8, Eobard Thawne. Eobard Thawne was a brilliant scientist born in the 25th century and genetically altered to already be smarter than most with an IQ of 167, which automatically gives him a technological understanding that exceeds almost everyone from the modern era. But he was able to create his own negative speed force that has the ability to shut off other speedsters' connection to the regular speed force. His negative speed force also gave him the ability to digest information at an incredibly fast rate, and that, coupled with his already high intelligence, makes him extremely capable with his mind, even being able to figure out insane ways of manipulating time to his advantage. Now, he isn't the greatest fighter, but with his speed and his mind, he doesn't need to be. Number 7. Dr. Sivana. Sivana is a scientific genius, mastering almost all of the scientific disciplines that exist on Earth, making him one of the leading minds on Earth. He is one of the cookie cutters that people think of when talking about mad scientists. He is also the arch enemy of Shazam and the Captain Marvel family, and because of this, and his genius, he has elevated himself beyond just being a scientific genius, studying the occult, and being able to teach himself how to harness magic, specifically after he joined forces with Mr. Mind and when he reawakened Black Adam, which is when his right eye became capable of seeing magical energies. Number 6. Professor Ivo. Professor Ivo is a genius, specifically specializing in cybernetics. He has built Amazo, Amazoid, Composite Superman, and Kid Amazo, and he was also the partner of T.O. Morrow in building Red Volcano. He also built the body of Tomorrow Woman, but he was also able to figure out how to give himself immortality even if the formula that granted him this ability was flawed and left him pretty rough looking. Number 10. Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy, also known as Pamela Isley, wields a formidable and unique level of power that sets her apart as one of Batman's most powerful villains. Gifted with a deep connection to plant life, Ivy's powers encompass both botanical manipulation and a heightened affinity for nature. She can communicate with plants, control their growth, and command them to bend to her will, utilizing them as powerful weapons or protective barriers, and she can do this on a global scale. Her toxic touch, stemming from her ability to secrete potent pheromones, makes her a dangerous foe in close combat, assuming combatants can even get that close. Her expertise in biochemistry allows her to concoct various deadly toxins and antidotes, making her a master of botanical chemistry, and she can pretty much heal herself at will. What truly makes Poison Ivy fearsome is her ability to bend the very ecosystems to her command, unleashing nature's wrath upon her enemies. Now, this isn't as impressive as her other feats of power, but she is also quite good at seducing her enemies, bending them to her will, which she has even done to the Man of Steel. Usually this is done with toxins, but sometimes just through straight up charm. With her compelling blend of power, allure, and eco-conscious motivations, Poison Ivy has been an incredibly popular villain who few can really stand against. Number 9. Larfleeze. Larfleeze, or Agent Orange, is one unique character in the emotional spectrum, and that's because he's the sole wielder of the orange light of avarice. He is the only member of the Orange Lantern Corps. Larfleeze is driven by an insatiable greed that grants him dominion over all that he desires, driving him into conflict with whoever possesses what it is that he does desire, and over the power of the Orange Lanterns, which represent greed. His power is centered on his ability to conjure constructs using the stolen identities and forms of those he has absorbed into his horde, making him basically an army unto himself. This ability extends even to abstract concepts and beings, showcasing the extent of his control. The big thing about Larfleeze is that since he spent so much time with his Orange Lantern and ring, he has basically become the living Orange Lantern himself. This energy grants him huge levels of power. His constructs are virtually indestructible and can overwhelm even the most powerful opponents. However, Larfleeze's power comes at the cost of his individuality, as his insatiable greed makes him less of a person and more of a living embodiment of greed itself. Even without the power of the Orange Lantern, his race is already basically immortal, with Larfleeze himself being billions of years old, and with enough power that I seriously doubt he will be going down anytime soon. Number 8. Time Trapper. The Time Trapper is often associated with the Legion of Superheroes, and he operates as a master manipulator of time. If you know comics and time travel, then you know that this gives the Time Trapper control over the fabric of reality itself. Possessing the power to alter and manipulate the past, present, and future, the Trapper can rewrite history on an unprecedented scale. He was able to age anyone he chose to the point of bones or ashes if he wanted to. He was capable of creating an iron curtain of time, which was a barrier which prevented time travel. The Time Trapper was also able to create a temporal force barrier which he used to seal a time-traveling Superman off from the 20th century. He was able to take a slice of time from the post-crisis DCU 1 million years in the past and craft its Earth and Krypton into realities similar to the recently destroyed Earth 1 universe, forming a pocket universe. He made a pocket universe. That's nuts. These are godly feats of time manipulation and control. Often depicted as a shadowy, hooded figure, the character's level of power is so vast that even immensely powerful cosmic entities such as the Timeless Ones tread cautiously in his presence. On top of that though, he possesses power with size alteration, intangibility, flight, telepathy, telekinesis, alongside symbolizing the very essence of temporal manipulation and unpredictability in the DC universe. Number 7. General Zod. Hailing from the planet Krypton, General Zod possesses the same superhuman abilities as Superman due to their shared origin. These abilities include super strength, speed, invulnerability, heat vision, and flight, making him a physical match for the Man of Steel. What set Zod apart though is that he was originally the leader of the military defense for the Kryptonian Science Council. He betrayed the Science Council after learning that they were lying to him about the inevitable destruction of the planet Krypton and was banished to the Phantom Zone by Superman's father, Jor-El, who he swore vengeance against for not siding with him. His formidable combat experience and tactical genius acquired during his time as a military leader on Krypton make him a fearsome adversary in battle. Zod's obsession with Kryptonian superiority and his unrelenting desire to establish dominance often drive him to harness his power to their fullest extent, doing things that would make Superman faint. Throughout his appearances in DC Comics, General Zod's determination, belief in his cause, and great power, coupled with the fact that he pretty much always comes back somehow, make him pretty hard to put down for good, unless you're Henry Cavill. Number 6. Vandal Savage. Vandal Savage was alive 50,000 years ago as a chief of a tribe of other cavemen, but when he came into contact with a strange meteorite, it exploded and bathed him in this strange alien radiation that gave him immunity to aging, disease, and fatigue, meaning he is effectively immortal. The meteorite also increased his intelligence to superhuman levels, which combined with 50,000 years of learning, experiencing, and living alongside every single technological innovation in the history of man, Vandal Savage possesses skills in almost all areas of the human experience, even basically becoming immune to pain. Specifically though, he focuses on the tactical skills that would help him become a world conqueror. His schemes range from being a conqueror to a criminal mastermind, leveraging his intellect and immortality to reshape civilizations and wield substantial influence. His power is further magnified by his ability to learn and adapt from each encounter, making him an almost insurmountable adversary for even the most powerful heroes. With his immortality, intelligence, and complex motivations, Vandal Savage is one villain that seems to just keep on popping up.
Is Rogolzar? Rogolzar? I don't know. To call this freaky alien dude a heavy hitter is a vast understatement. He's this intergalactic mercenary who's not here to play games. What sets him apart is his intense hatred for Kryptonians. He's got this burning grudge against them, and he won't stop until he wipes out everything related to Krypton, which is already pretty harsh. I mean, their whole planet was blown to smithereens, but that wasn't enough for this guy. And so, he's dedicated his life to traversing the cosmos, hunting down the few Kryptonians who've managed to survive. So picture this, when he first showed up, he took on Superman and Supergirl at the same time, and they had to pull out all the stops, not even beating him with their powers, but instead relying on this gadget called the Phantom Zone Projector, just to get the upper hand. And let me tell you, it was not an easy feat to get this guy down. But here's where it gets even crazier. After that, he breaks out with a whole bunch of criminals and jumps back into action, attacking Superman, Supergirl, and General Zod, and even John Kent all at once. Now, folks, you'd be pretty stupid not to put him in your top villain list. But you gotta admit, taking on these big name heroes all at the same time, some seriously impressive stuff, and it's something that doesn't get enough credit. At number 9, Chari Badiz. I don't know. This dude, he's one of those DC villains who doesn't hog the spotlight, probably on account of his horrible name. Now, in Aquaman's World of Foes, where Black Manta and Ocean Master usually steal the show, this dude enters the scene and is a real troublemaker. What's cool, or should I say twistedly impressive, is his partnership with Silica. These two were like a villainous power couple causing mayhem, but things got seriously out of hand when this dude went full rogue. After Scylla kicked the bucket, he went all in on Aquaman. I mean, he actually went as far as stealing a superhero's powers. He did just that, swiping Aquaman's mojo and using it to make piranhas munch on the hero's hand. But then the plot thickens. After Aquaman's retaliation splash, this dude tried to command the fish again, and it ended up blowing up in his face. Instead of controlling them, he sort of fussed those little fishies, becoming this piranha-man hybrid, which sounds pretty cool. Now, he gained underwater skills and beefed up muscles, but compared to his hand-eating shenanigans, it was going from a blockbuster to a B movie, let's just put it that way. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is Prometheus. Prometheus had a rough start in life, to say the least. His parents were crooks, and they met their end at the hands of the cops. So he ended up inheriting all their shady stuff and took on a path completely opposite to justice. What sets Prometheus apart is his brain power. He's like a dark reflection of Batman. This guy, without any superpowers, goes toe-to-toe against the entire Justice League. He's got these plans, like a villainous playbook on how to take down each member of the Justice League, and he actually almost pulled it off. Yeah, he single-handedly took down the big guns of the JLA, one hero at a time. The craziest part was how he hacked into their super secret Watchtower computers, which nearly led to the defeat of the most powerful superhero team on Earth, which takes some serious smarts and guts. And this was just his very first strike against the Justice League, so that's seriously a wake-up call for anybody who underestimated this cunning evil genius. At number 7 is Extant, I think. Alright, picture this bad guy as a sort of behind-the-scenes baddie pulling the strings and causing chaos. He started off as Monarch, which is already a big deal in the villain world, but then he teamed up with Parallax, got himself some time-traveling powers, and decided to tinker with the multiverse. Pretty intense. Now, when Extant clashed with the Justice Society of America, it was like watching a showdown between a bulldozer and a sandcastle. He didn't just defeat them, he practically wiped the floor with these seasoned heroes. Some he aged up, while others he straight out just knocked them out. But the Justice Society of America didn't back down. They regrouped, got their act together, and eventually took Extant down. However, this initial attack was a real showstopper. It's like he made an entrance nobody could forget, a real shock to the superhero community. He might not always come out on top, but his impact is seriously unforgettable. At number 6 is Dr. Savannah. When it comes to the DC Universe's Rogues Gallery, there are some villains that get all the spotlight, while others get basically none. Take Dr. Savannah, for instance. He is to Shazam what Lex Luthor is to Superman. Just as evil and brainy as Lex Luthor, but without the fame, riz, or notoriety. But when it comes to mad scientists in comics, this guy is the OG. He's got the super incredible knack for scheming up and executing diabolical plans with brain power alone. But here's the thing, not many of his recent comics give him the chance to truly shine. That is, until the Multiversity Thunderworld Adventures comic. So in this epic scene, Savannah and his multiverse clones gang up and storm the Rock of Eternity. Now, the Rock of Eternity isn't your average hangout. It's a spot where the big shot wizard hangs out. And Savannah pulls a bold move and actually manages to lock up the wizard. Not stopping there, he decks out his own offspring with the powers similar to Shazam's crew, making it a superhero headache to stop him. I mean, just think about it, imprisoning a magical heavyweight and then turning your spawn into superpowered versions of themselves? Some next level supervillain stuff right there. So even if Dr. Savannah isn't grabbing headlines, don't underestimate the brilliance of this wicked mind in the DC baddie lineup. At number 5 is Vandal Savage. He's like a solid B-list villain in the DC world. Like, he's been around, tangled with superheroes, but somehow hasn't hit the big leagues yet. But don't write him off just yet. Check out his 853rd century version of himself in this storyline called DC 1 Million. Savage really amps up his game, buddying up with Solaris, the Tyrant's son, aiming to take down the Justice League of America across time and space. And guess what Savage actually pulled off? He did this crazy thing where he swapped the future team with the present one, almost spelling doom for both sides playing with time like that. But ultimately, Savage's pride got the better of him. In a classic karma strike, he got zapped back to a nuclear attack set off in the past, which, that's tough. At number 4 is Mordru. Mordru, the Sorcerer Supreme equivalent in DC's villain catalog is a heavyweight in the magical corner of the DC universe. Like, his home planet is literally known as Sorcerer's World, the universal center of all magic, so you could guess he's pretty magical. He didn't just pop up once, he made a grand entrance by throwing down with the Legion of Superheroes way off in the future. Sneaky as they come, he even managed to sneak back into the past without anybody batting an eye. Now, when he crossed paths with the Justice Society of America, things went from zero to chaos in a flash. The heroes managed to trap him in a Dr. Fate amulet, thinking that they'd sorted it all out, but that was all according to Morgeroux's big plan. He flipped the script, snagged the power of Fate, and teamed up with Eclipso and Obsidian. They took over Earth, casting the world into a near-constant eclipse. At number 3 is Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze, initially known as Dr. Victor Fries, or Mr. Zero, started off as a typical icy antagonist in the world of comic books, but let me tell you, his story took a wild turn in 1992 with that Batman the Animated Series episode called Heart of Ice. Before that, he was just a goofy, run-of-the-mill baddie chilling in the background of Batman's world, but then something magical happened. The animated series reimagined Mr. Freeze, giving him depth we've never seen before. His super awesome deep voice that was really haunting and really made you feel his pain. Suddenly Freeze wasn't just freezing Gotham, he was a guy wrecked by sadness and revenge. The core of his story revolved around his wife Nora. Freeze was desperately trying to save her from a terminal illness, but corporate greed and tragic lab accident with cryogenic stuff turned him into an icy guy who can't survive outside of his suit. But then things got really icy in a bad way. In the live-action movie called Batman and Robin, remember Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze? Yeah, that one's with all the cold puns like chill out and nice to meet you. Yeah, it was super goofy that turned Freeze into a walking joke. Well, unfortunately, that's what many folks still remember him as to this day. But in the comics, Freeze stayed close to the series version from the animated series until New 52 shook things up. Scott Snyder took Freeze in a different direction, making Freeze way less sympathetic by altering his reality. Suddenly, Nora wasn't his wife anymore, just some girl with a made-up illness. And the guy who pulled the plug on his research, surprise, surprise, it was none other than Bruce Wayne himself, which was a twist that made everybody involved look a lot less likable. So while some chop him up to just a dude with a freeze ray, he's actually way cooler than that. Haha. At number 2 is Zoom. Zoom, aka Hunter Zolomon, was like a rival to Wally West, much like how Reverse Flash, aka Eobard Thawne, is the rival to Barry Allen. In fact, a lot of the same themes from the Barry Allen story are reintroduced here. Zolomon used to be a regular FBI guy, but things took a wild turn when he tried to use the cosmic treadmill to fix up the past, which granted him these epic time-traveling powers. Now, Zolomon had this whole beef with Wally West, the fastest Flash, mind you. He wanted Wally to help him out with his time travel troubles, but when Wally West said no, things went haywire. Zolomon went all in, donning the Reverse Flash-style threads and took on the name Zoom, completely inspired by Eobard's Professor Zoom. Zoom's deal was trying to wreck everything the Flash ever stood for through deception and murder, which twistedly culminated in Zoom's plan to make West a better hero by causing him a life full of tragedies. Now, what's mind-blowing is that Zoom managed to outspeed Wally West, who's the fastest Flash among Flashes. Imagine beating the fastest guy around, like that's no small feat. To take Zoom down, Wally had to dig deep and pull out all the stops, but despite the incredible feat, Zoom just doesn't quite get the recognition he deserves. Barry Allen's return and the rise of the Reverse Flash kind of stole Zoom's thunder, even though Zoom managed to outpace the top-tier Flash, and that's no small accomplishment. And at number 1 is Hush. Meet Hush, also known as Thomas Elliot. This dude is not your average villain. He's not a Joker or Penguin per se, but he's got the cunning, the smarts, and he's a worthy adversary of the Caped Crusader, to say the least. Thomas Elliot, a childhood buddy of Bruce Wayne, grows up to become this hotshot neurosurgeon. But behind that successful facade lies a guy who blames Bruce's dad, Thomas Wayne, for messing up his life by saving his mom. That grudge transforms him into Hush, a master manipulator with a bone to pick with Batman. Now, what's fascinating is how he plays the long game, standing out with his intricate and calculated strategies to take down Batman. What's even more impressive is the fact that he managed to outsmart the Dark Knight himself, which is not an easy task. Now, what's cool about Hush is that he's not just the run-of-the-mill villain. I mean, sure, he's got dual pew-pews, which is pretty impressive, and he drops quotes from Aristotle, adding to this whole sophisticated vibe to his character. But what's really fascinating is how he challenges Batman on an intellectual level. He's not just there to beat him up, he wants to outwit him, which, believe it or not, is a tall order. Now the thing is, even though he's not as famous as some other Gotham villains, Hush managed to give Batman a run for his money, which is a super big deal. Like, imagine going toe-to-toe with the smartest kid in class and almost acing the test. That's Hush for you. He's underrated but seriously impressive in his own right.
Number 5, Parallax. This cosmic entity is a cosmic entity, so it kind of defeats what I just said in the intro, but he's the living embodiment of fear and has created several problems for different heroes over the years, and still he's somehow kind of small and relegated to like this corner of DC. Originally imprisoned by the Guardians of the Universe in their central power battery, his presence would eventually lead to the corruption of a couple of the Green Lantern Corps' power rings, creating the Yellow Lanterns. Parallax is immortal and exists as pure energy, unable to be destroyed and more than capable of manipulating matter and energy on a cosmic scale. He's able to generate such intense fear in a person that he can actually control them, having done this to several heroes without much effort over the years, the likes of which include Superman and even Wonder Woman. His biggest feat would have to be the corruption of Hal Jordan though, causing the guy to do some pretty unspeakable things like wiping out the entire Green Lantern Corps. Funnily enough, that wasn't the original reason, but DC just retconned it to that so Hal could seem a little bit more redeemable after he just did that. Well, there you go. Number 4, Reverse Flash. Eobard Thawne is what happens when you take the Flash and make him utterly insane. Possessing a deep obsession with the Flash, Thawne's connection to the negative Speed Force grants him superhuman speed and reflexes that meet those of the Scarlet Speedster himself, and sometimes go a little bit past that. This negative Speed Force grants him a kind of power over time manipulation and enabling him to travel through time at will. This mastery of temporal mechanics allows him to alter history, create alternate timelines, and manipulate events to his advantage. His ability to affect the past and future makes him a uniquely terrifying opponent, as he can unravel the very fabric of reality itself. Then, as a villain of Flash, Eobard's intimate knowledge of the Flash's life and history enables him to anticipate his every single move, making it extremely challenging for the Flash to outsmart him, and Eobard has revealed that he has manipulated Barry's life to be the way that it is, which is kind of just a huge old time loop that probably unravels if you try to think about it too much, but just don't do that, so there you go. This combination of incredible speed, time manipulation, and strategic intellect makes Reverse Flash an arch nemesis who constantly pushes the Flash to his limits, solidifying his reputation as truly powerful, incredibly unpredictable, and very hard to stop. Number 3, Starro. If you have seen the newest Suicide Squad movie, the one with Idris Elba and John Cena, then you know who Starro is. He's that massive, terrifying starfish alien conqueror that was releasing millions of tiny starfish that turn people into unwilling servants. Starro is actually one of the Justice League's earliest villains, and he poses a massive threat as he can use his reproduced drones to take control of an entire population, and he has subdued members of the Justice League multiple times, just like how it was done in that film. Originally, he could even turn actual starfish into deputies of his, making multiple Starros. Other than the mind control, drones, copies, its immense resilience, and energy absorption, Starro is also incredibly capable with regenerating, being able to grow back fully from just a fragment of his own body. There are some versions of Starro who are the size of an ocean, and they are totally capable of terraforming entire planets. Yes, he's basically a starfish, but imagining an absolutely massive ocean-sized starfish attacking our planet with drones that can turn people into unwilling servants with almost no way to stop it? That's pretty terrifying. Number 2, Eclipso. When Eclipso made his comic book debut in 1963, he was nothing more than the evil side of archaeologist Bruce Gordon that came out during the eclipse. Pretty simple. But then we fast forward to DC's 1992 Eclipso: The Darkness Within, and out of kind of nowhere, Eclipso is revealed to be a powerful cosmic entity representing the wrath of God that turned evil and was cast from heaven, replaced by the Spectre. Now, he is an entity who is trapped in a gigantic black diamond that was cut into smaller diamonds, one of which was found by Bruce Wayne years and years ago. In an event called Darkness Within, these fragments of the black diamond were activated on various powerful beings, allowing Eclipso to possess them, and one of these beings happened to be Superman himself, and the world's heroes had to fight tooth and nail to try and stop this powerful possessed Superman. It was the wizard Shazam and Billy Batson, Captain Marvel, who finally stopped him, and with the help of the Spectre, Eclipso was forced back into the reformed Diamond, but he's not gone. He's still around. He's just chilling in the Diamond somewhere. Number 1. Solaris. Introduced in the storyline DC 1 million, Solaris stands as a sentient, malevolent, artificial sun from the 20th century, but he survived till and had a bigger part to play in the distant 853rd century. That's a lot of centuries. What sets Solaris apart from other villains is its status as a living star, a conscious being born from the fusion of advanced technology and the essence of a dying sun. Possessing vast cosmic power, Solaris is a relentless foe who manipulates radiation, gravity, and I mean, he's a sun! He's hella powerful, manipulating immense energy to reshape its surroundings and project formidable attacks. Its motivation lies in a deep-seated desire to spread its influence and attain ultimate dominance in the universe, but also in the fact that he was defeated by the second Superman and has vowed vengeance against all Supermen who pop up after that. Solaris possesses a unique threat that transcends traditional physical battles, becoming the concept of a living sun with malevolent intent adds an enthralling layer of cosmic mystery and existential danger, and I don't want to think about that. Number 5. Batman Who Laughs. Look, I'm sorry that this guy makes almost every single DC villain related list, but it's not my fault. DC took a version of Batman, a level 9 intelligence with an IQ of 192 and an unbelievable amount of skill, and turned him into a villain, and that almost automatically puts the Batman Who Laughs in the top tier of threats. But then, they also Jokerized him, and it made the character capable of almost destroying the entire multiverse with the powers of Dr. Manhattan. Just like Lex Luthor, Bruce Wayne is just a normal guy, so to elevate himself to the level of a multiversal god who defeats almost any threat posed against him, the intelligence, cunning, and skill he would have to possess this is just beyond anything else we have ever seen. Just like Batman, the Batman Who Laughs is a planner who lets almost nothing get in his way. I wouldn't be surprised if he finds a way to return to the DC universe very soon. Number 4. Darkseid. The most intelligent of the new gods with the exception of Metron, Uxas is the genius ruler of Apocalypse who has developed advanced technologies, conquered countless worlds, gained the anti-life equation, and developed the Soulfire formula for defeating the Source. He is one of the ultimate enemies of the universe, and while that is largely due to the amount of sheer power he has, it's backed up by an incredible level of otherworldly intelligence and an insane amount of experience. He's a master tactician that is able to pretty much outthink almost all of the universe's superheroes, and his presence is always a massive cause for concern that always requires a group effort to overcome. Number 3. Ozymandias. The Watchmen comics, which are integrated with DC but always feel slightly separate, have this knack for being rather realistic in terms of comic books, which is why their version of the smartest man on Earth is actually quite terrifying. Ozymandias is wildly intelligent, but because of Watchmen's realism, he doesn't often make the same stupid, ego-fueled mistakes that other villains, like Lex Luthor, do. Also, more often than not, the heroes kind of find themselves a little conflicted when facing him. That's because he is genuinely trying to help everyone except for the millions or billions of people who would perish for his goals to become reality. Ozymandias is also possibly responsible for pulling strings throughout the multiverse in order to enact his own wills. I feel like since he's more involved with the Watchmen, he kinda gets overlooked, but he is almost always given the title of smartest man on Earth, and it's not for no reason. Number 2. Lex Luthor. Luthor achieved his place as Earth's greatest criminal in the mainstream DC universe thanks to his super intellect, eidetic memory, and gift for strategy. He's also one of the only villains who has repeatedly rallied together the other supervillains, which someone on the internet described as trying to herd a group of cats, and Lex was able to do it. There isn't a facet of science Luthor hasn't mastered to extend his goals or enhance his business empire, including space, time, and extra-dimensional travel, biochemistry, robotics, and synthetics. Luthor isn't just considered the most intelligent human, but one of the most brilliant beings in the multiverse. I find Lex and Oz to be fairly equal, but obviously Lex has many more examples that show off his vast intelligence, and that just puts him a cut above at number 2. But at number 1, it's Brainiac. There is no being in the universe that can stand up to the intellectual power of Brainiac, and with that name, it would just be silly if anyone could. Using his biological supercomputer of a brain, Brainiac rules over planets that he has conquered and manipulates events from the shadows. shadows. He even has other separate versions of himself that could each take up a point on this list. His brain is so powerful that he often doesn't have to engage in actual combat at all. His obsession with learning and studying everything has led him across the cosmos, destroying anything that gets in his way, leading him to possess the combined knowledge of many thousands of worlds that he has assimilated and contained. He is, on paper, the smartest DC villain out there. Unfortunately for him, in practice, he's outsmarted by some relatively simple things, like, for example, the fact that germs exist. But despite that, there's absolutely no doubt that this 12th level intellectual being lives up to the name of Brainiac as one of the smartest villains in DC Comics. Number 5. Pig. Professor Pig is a villain that came to be during a time when Batman stories were becoming incredibly dark, and Pig himself has to be one of the darkest villains of that era. His methods completely disgust the Dark Knight. He looks like a character straight out of a horror or slasher movie, and his obsession with physical perfection, like in the myth of Pygmalion, became part of the reason he surgically mutilates his victims, turning them into his mind-controlled servants called Dolotrons. If his crimes weren't horrifying enough, then just look at him. Yeah. Get out of my nightmares, thank you. Bye. Number 4. Scarecrow. With Scarecrow, fear is the name of the game. I don't believe Batman is actually scared of Scarecrow himself, but Scarecrow has used his fear toxin to debilitate and send the Dark Knight running on multiple occasions, and that makes him a unique foe that puts Batman in a position he doesn't often find himself in. Batman is a physical powerhouse with a mind that is exceedingly sharp, but his mind is also partially his biggest weakness because he has some serious psychological issues, and Scarecrow's whole shtick is manipulating that kind of thing. When Scarecrow pops up on the scene, the Dark Knight knows that something terrifying is coming his way. Number 3. The Court of Owls. Probably the oldest, most secretive, and most profitable group in Gotham City's underworld. When Bruce Wayne became a threat to them, they put Batman through one hell of a psychological ringer, and possibly one of the darkest Batman stories ever. He gets trapped in a huge Court of Owls maze underneath Gotham City, and trying to make his way through it, Batman goes through physical and psychological tests that nearly break the Dark Knight. But the court has so many feathers in all areas of Gotham and Bruce Wayne's own life. They may have even had a hand in the passing of his parents. Possibly. And we haven't even started talking about the Talons, a group of brainwashed and undead robot-like assassins. The combo of psychological warfare and the deadly Talons nearly brought Bruce Wayne to the pearly gates. Number 2. Bane. His name says it all, as Bane has been the bane of Batman on multiple occasions. The Bane we saw in the Dark Knight Rises movie was fantastic, and he absolutely instilled fear in Batman, but the comic version of that same story goes to a whole other level. With his master plan being even more well thought out and damaging to Batman, he unleashed Arkham Asylum on Gotham, putting Batman on the ropes as he has to chase down all the escaped criminals. Bane studied Batman. He utilizes his own weaknesses and completely destroys Batman, breaking his back in one of the most infamous comic book moments ever. More recently though, Bane brought Batman even lower than when he broke his spine because he broke Bruce's heart by snapping the neck of Alfred Pennyworth. Any battle Batman has fought against Bane has been with the help of his allies, and that's because Batman knows that he can't take on Bane alone. Number 1. The Joker. I think if there is one person who scares Batman more than anyone, it's gotta be the Joker. They have had such a long and complex history with each other, and I think because of that, and the Joker's obsession with the Bat, Joker knows all the ways to mess with Batman, and he's constantly coming up with new ones. He will go after anyone to get at Batman, and he will go through anyone just for the fun of it. He's unpredictable. Batman never knows for sure where he will strike and what he will do unless the Joker wants Batman to know. Everything is a game that he knows the rules to. The other thing about Joker is that he would never actually take the Dark Knight's life. In fact, I feel like he would probably destroy anyone who tries to. This just makes him more terrifying as he simply wants to be a constant cause of fear and anxiety for the Dark Knight, and he is. Number 5. Emperor Joker. Mr. Mxyzptlk has an extreme level of power power, like I said. Also, like I said, if this power fell into the wrong hands, it could be potentially reality ending. Now, what hands could be worse than the psychotic hands of Batman's arch nemesis, the Joker? Well, that's exactly who gets the power in the Emperor Joker storyline. Mr. Mix gets bored and wants to give Joker 1% of his power, just to see the tricks Joker is able to pull off. But instead, the Joker tricks Mr. Mxyzptlk into giving him 99.9% of his power instead. Joker uses this power to rewrite all of reality to become his sick, twisted dream world. He eats the whole population of China out of a Chinese food container box. He keeps everyone stuck in a time loop, including Batman, who he introduces to the afterlife over and over every day forever. Oh, and he also turned Flash into a slow-moving Abyss Man. Superman, the Spectre, and Mr. Mxyzptlk, being the only ones who can remember the former world, tried to do something about this all-powerful Joker. But that's just the problem. He is all-powerful. He destroys all of reality, but he can't bring himself to destroy Batman fully. And because of this, he loses control of his power, allowing the Spectre and Mr. Mix to steal it back and fix all of reality. But this story it's pretty nuts. Number 4. Condiment King. When the villainous Condiment King came on the scene, it was literally on the scene, as he appeared in the animated Batman TV show from 1992. One of the best, honestly. Condiment King was Buddy Stantler, a comedian who was brainwashed by the Joker into becoming a villain who wields condiment squirters and viciously horrible puns. I knew you'd catch up to me sooner or later. How I've relished this meeting. Come, Batman, let's see if you can cut the mustard. Diabolical stuff like that. The puns get even worse in the comics, with his real name becoming a pun on its own. Mitchell Mayo. He isn't taken seriously by anyone. His weapons don't actually project his condiments at a speed fast enough to do anyone harm, but they sure are inconvenient, leaving nasty stains in your superhero costume. On the other hand, he does potentially have the ability to be able to cause anaphylactic shock if he is battling someone with an allergy, right? Number 3. Monsieur Mallah and the Brain. Monsieur Mallah is described in his wiki as a militant, super intelligent French gorilla. The Brain, on the other hand, is described as a genius French scientist and master criminal who exists as a disembodied brain. So, those two descriptions are interesting enough on their own, but when I tell you the French militant gorilla and the disembodied brain are an item together, I think that just elevates the whole thing to a different level. Together, they are the primary leaders of the Brotherhood of Evil, who were villains to both the Doom Patrol and the Teen Titans. They both appeared in Doom Patrol 86 in 1964. Now, Brain was once a scientist who experimented on the gorilla who would become Mallah, which would increase Mallah's intelligence. An accident injured Ernst, and Mallah had to remove Ernst's brain and place it in a technological holding thingamajig to keep him alive and be able to communicate. The two are almost always together, with Mallah carrying around the brain. Hey, look, I don't judge. You find love where you find love, but as a concept for supervillains who lead a team of supervillains, you gotta admit it's pretty odd to say the least. Number 2. Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. Let me repeat that for all those in the back who may not have heard. Animal, Vegetable, Mineral, Man. I don't really have a problem with 2/3 of that. I just get really hung up on the vegetable part. Is that weird? Sven Larsson is the man who claims that title. And while it is a completely ridiculous one, it is actually pretty fitting. Sven fell victim to an experiment of his own making, which allows him to transform into any animal, vegetable, or mineral, either partially or fully, although he very obviously likes to do a bit of all three at the same time, which is an odd choice, but hey, I just work here. Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man first appeared in Doom Patrol 89 in August 1964, and he is an enemy to the team, which makes sense given their weirdness. But Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man here has a vendetta against the Doom Patrol's leader, the Chief, who he believed once stole an invention of his. An invention that, funnily enough, is the only way of stopping Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. But he didn't even do that, so I don't know. Look, it gets weirder and weirder, but I gotta move on. Before I do though, Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to get out of my system one more time. Number 1, Mr. Mind. I think anyone who hasn't heard of this villain before would be forgiven. When you think of the most fearsome villains, specifically the villains of Captain Marvel, otherwise known as Shazam, you may not first think about the 7-inch long sentient worm from Venus known as Mr. Mind. This diabolically evil mind-controlling worm, after the events of Infinite Crisis, would cocoon himself and then emerge as a massive monstrosity capable of manipulating reality, consuming universes, and traveling through time time and space. He was described as eating years and events from this universe's history, altering the Earth with every flap of his wings. It took a combined effort from Booster Gold, Supernova, and Skeets to defeat Mr. Mind by trapping him inside Skeets' shell, which was fortified by the Suspendium. Then, Booster Gold threw Skeets through time with the help of Supernova to the day he was first discovered on Earth by Dr. Sivana, and then he is trapped in a time loop forever. So they didn't even actually end up ending him. They just trapped him. This all-powerful mind-controlling 7-inch long worm.
Number 5. Trigon. Trigon was a regular evil ruler of a planet until one day a group of aliens known as the Divine showed up, hoping to use something called the Great Heart of Darkness to eat his soul and cleanse the planet of evil. This backfired as Trigon absorbed the heart and gained the power of 100 galaxies worth of collected evils. It was at this point that the Divine revealed that they were not a boy band as their name suggested, but were in fact his parents. This family reunion was cut short when Trigon skinned them and wore them like coats. He would go on to have many sons whose mothers he would kill, and one daughter, Raven. Raven would not end up going into the family business, but would instead end up joining the Teen Titans and becoming Trigon's greatest enemy. He has mind control powers, shape-shifting, dimensional travel, the ability to manipulate matter, and telepathy and telekinesis, just to name a few of his powers. He is immortal, having apparently been around since the dawn of time, and nearly invulnerable, having shrugged off blows from Wonder Girl and Superboy, with Superboy even saying that punching Trigon felt like trying to destroy a mountain with a teaspoon. Number 4. Darkseid. After the old gods died in a battle against evil, the planets New Genesis and Apocalypse were born. The latter fell under the control of an evil and tyrannical new god called Darkseid. New Genesis housed the source of all life, the life equation, and Darkseid became obsessed with finding its opposite force, the anti-life equation. He discovered that the anti-life equation was on the planet Earth and began a campaign to conquer the planet, bringing him into constant conflict with the members of the Justice League, particularly Superman. He is all but immortal, invulnerable, and super strong. As if that wasn't bad enough, he is also an incredible tactician with a keen scientific mind who has telepathic powers and the ability to shoot omega beams from his eyes, which he can use to either destroy or teleport his victims, such as when he sent Batman back to caveman times at the end of Final Crisis, essentially turning the Dark Knight into a temporal bomb. Even Superman has trouble going toe-to-toe with this god, whose only weakness is a substance called radium. Number 3. Mr. Mxyzptlk. Mr. Mxyzptlk is a fifth-dimensional being who has developed an obsession with Superman and likes to spend his time harassing the Man of Steel and putting him through various ordeals for his own amusement. He can fly, teleport, and create essentially anything he likes with just a thought. He is also a character with cosmic awareness, sometimes speaking directly to the reader as though he is aware of his place in a comic book. He is a relatively benign nuisance most of the time, merely wanting to put Superman through the ringer with his various cosmic pranks, but he is capable of extreme villainy when he wants to be, such as in Alan Moore's Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, where he grows bored and decides to become truly evil, manipulating events to kill several of Superman's friends and ruining his life in the process. Mixie is so powerful that even he thinks it's unfair. So, to be a good sport, he gave himself a weakness that makes it so that the only way to stop him is to trick Mr. Mxyzptlk into saying his name backwards, which is of course Kiltipsixum. When you consider that this is a self-imposed weakness, and in theory if he wanted to remove this rule he could at any time, it makes you realize just how unstoppable he really is. Number 2. The Anti-Monitor. When a scientist on the planet Oa developed a screen to witness the creation of the universe, this caused a massive explosion which split reality and formed the multiverse. The Oans began a civil war, and several of them left for the Quard dimension, seeking the means to become all-powerful. Quard was in the antimatter dimension, and one day an excess energy on Quard's moon formed into a being known as the Anti-Monitor, who fed off of the evil energy of the antimatter universe and took over his universe. He wanted to then destroy all the positive matter universes in order to become as powerful as possible, causing the Crisis on Infinite Earths, where he went to war with the various superheroes of the multiverse, which resulted in the multiverse being streamlined into one universe. Barely any of those sound like real words. He has destroyed and absorbed over 1,000 universes and is capable of being able to alter reality and increase the power levels of the villains who serve him. He is essentially immortal, being able to fight the strongest heroes from hundreds of universes at once without taking any apparent damage. It was only through the actions of the Spectre, who had been empowered by all of the various DC universe's most powerful sorcerers, that the heroes were able to defeat him at the dawn of time. He was eventually killed by Superman 2, but was restored to life when the multiverse was recreated. Number 1. Necron. Necron's origins are shrouded in mystery, with rumors that he existed before life or was created by darkness itself to serve as its protector. Other stories say that he was imprisoned into the land of the unliving by the Guardians of the Universe near the beginning of time. For most of eternity he was unaware of life, but once he discovered its existence, he became obsessed with becoming its master. He fought against the Green Lantern several times with his army of the undead until he formed his own Lantern Corps by trapping the Anti-Monitor in his own central power battery. The Black Lanterns are comprised of dead superheroes as well as the entire population of the destroyed Coast City, who he has resurrected and forced to fight on his behalf. Even when his physical form is defeated, as he was never technically alive, he is simply sent back to the land of the unliving to begin plotting a new scheme to destroy life itself.
Next up is Rogal Zar. Rogal Zar is basically an alien warlord who was actually created by the papa of Superman, Jor-El. Rogal was responsible for destroying Krypton along with Empress Gandello of the Trillium Collective. He went on to later invade the Fortress of Solitude, and he destroyed the shrunken Kryptonian city of Kandor. Now, following a series of battles with Superman and Supergirl, the pair were only able to come out on top when the Girl of Steel used a Phantom Zone projector to send Zar to the Phantom Zone. Now, all of that is pretty impressive, but what really sold a lot of people on his actual raw power was later on, when Rogal escaped from the Phantom Zone, leading an army of criminals, including General Zod, who then turned on him. He did battle with Superman, Supergirl, General Zod, John Kent, and even Crypto the dog, all at the same time, until the Thanagarians showed up and put Zar in permanent stasis. Clifford Smek was a participant in a government experiment which caused him to tap into the quantum field, which allowed him to then manipulate dark matter. Now, we have no idea what that really means because we don't even really know what dark matter is, but in DC Comics, the dark matter in Major Force's body allows him to do incredible things like absorb energy, fly, regenerate, and even create light constructs like a Green Lantern can. Another side effect of all this concentrated energy inside of him means that he will go off like a nuclear boom boom if he is cut. That on its own is a huge power boost, simply because now, as a result, most superheroes can't even risk fighting Major Force, just in case they cut him. But then, on top of that, even if he does go off, ripping apart his own body on an atomic level, the dark matter that he controls will just put Major Force back together again. And that's not even everything. Not only is Major Force a physical threat, but he is also, just to top it off, a psychological genius. Simply by talking to the Green Lantern Kyle Rayner, Major Force convinced the superhero to give up his own power ring, the source of his power, and one of the most dangerous things in the universe. Prometheus is going to be up next on our list today, and heroes and villains with no powers always seem to be some of the most powerful. It's kind of strange. Prometheus, after seeing his criminal parents pass away at the hands of the police, he vows a vendetta on any form of justice, a vendetta that would push him to be able to defeat the entire Justice League single-handedly. He shot the Martian Manhunter with a dart that turned his powers against him and set him on fire. He infected Steel's armor with a computer virus which commanded the suit to damage the Watchtower. He hypnotized the Huntress into unconsciousness, attacked Green Lantern with a neural chaff that rendered his ring useless. He trapped the angel Zariel in limbo, tricked the Flash into believing that he had planted motion-sensitive devices that would just go off if the Flash used his powers, and he defeated Batman in hand-to-hand combat, which is nuts. His origin is very similar to Batman's. After his parents were dispatched from the mortal plane, he would travel the globe training and becoming the ultimate combat machine. But he also attended all the top universities, learning as much as he could. He eventually set up a base in the Ghost Zone, and from here he built an armor that could download information on any opponent's fighting style, kind of reminiscent of Taskmaster's ability from Marvel Comics. He is kind of crazy capable, but his vendetta on any kind of justice, plus his Batman likeness, just kind of makes him a little weird to me. Next up, we got Tattooed Man. Abel Tarrant was a sailor who discovered a strange chemical that could bring drawings to life. Now, realizing the potential this chemical had, he inked his entire body with it and became the supervillain Tattooed Man. While performing crimes, his ink actually comes to life to attack his enemies. Over the years, he has fought superheroes with tattoos of tigers, cars, ships, monsters, bears, fire, planes, and dinosaurs. He can even use a tattoo of wings to give himself the ability to fly. Tattoo Man has never been considered a super serious threat, but I think he should be because he is only limited by his imagination. There is nothing stopping him from creating a tattoo of a nuclear boom boom or even a black hole. If he inked kryptonite onto his body, there's no reason that he couldn't take down Superman if he wanted to. Next up today is Dr. Sivana. It's almost ironic that some of the biggest and the strongest superheroes find their adversaries in the form of kind of creepy, somewhat old, bald men. Superman has Lex Luthor, who isn't old, but he is bald. And then for Shazam, he's got Dr. Sivana, who is indeed both old and bald. Sivana is not the kind of guy who's going to be engaging in a battle of fisticuffs, but that's fine because his strength is in the brain department. The villain doesn't have a ton of monumental feats, but one of his best comes to us in the Multiversity Thunderworld Adventures. In the opening pages of this comic, Sivana literally attacks the Rock of Eternity, which is the source of Shazam's powers and the home base for the wizard Shazam. This place has never ever been attacked for an eternity, and Sivana attacked it with a bigger Rock of Eternity, which is weird. He had his own Shazam-like team of superpowered children and his own multiversal duplicates helping him along. He manages to take the wizard Shazam prisoner and mine the rock for its own power, granting himself his own monstrous Shazam-like form, and it's crazy. Now, with a name like Psycho Pirate, it's easy to not take this villain too seriously, but Roger Hayden is quite the capable guy. Hayden wears a faceplate called the Medusa Mask, which can control the emotions of anyone nearby, and he staunchly believed that this was his ticket to riches and power. When heroes or the police try to stop his crime sprees, Psycho Pirate just uses his mask to overwhelm his opponents with shame, guilt, depression, or any other number of emotions. He can also make a person develop a phobia of anything he wants them to be afraid of. Like, in his debut issue, he made Dr. Fate, one of the most powerful magic users in DC Comics, develop cytophobia, aka the fear of food. And then he attacked Fate with a pizza. That's amazing! Psycho Pirate has played a huge part in some of the biggest DC comics ever, including Crisis on Infinite Earths and Infinite Crisis. If you needed more proof, Amanda Waller, the head of the Task Force X program, aka the Suicide Squad, has claimed that Psycho Pirate is one of the scariest beings in the universe, calling him, quote, a man who could make gods go mad, a man who could make the mad gods sane again. And in our second place today is Extant. Henry Hall, the brother of Donald Hall, aka Dove, started his comic book life as Hawk, being empowered alongside his brother by a Lord of Chaos and a Lord of Order who had fallen in love. Now, Henry represented chaos. Hawk and Dove together were vigilantes and were even part of the Teen Titans for a time. After the Crisis on Infinite Earths, however, in a dystopian near future that was home to a time-traveling hero called Wave Rider, Henry had become an oppressive tyrant named Monarch who ended up going back in time and fighting the modern-day heroes before he was wiped out by the Henry of the present day. I hope you can follow that because it was kind of hard for me to follow when I read it. Present-day Henry then took up the Monarch title and mantle in the modern day, becoming a villain. Now, eventually, Monarch stole the time powers from Wave Rider and then allied himself with Parallax, aka the corrupted Hal Jordan, and he took on the new villain name of Extant. While he was the front for Parallax's scheme to recreate the multiverse using alternate timelines, he tried to alter time to give himself an entire army of superheroes and found himself battling all the greatest members of the JSA, and Extant tore through them all like they were a joke, and he even used his temporal powers to age up the members of the JSA that he didn't just straight up send to the afterlife. And lastly today, I think anyone who hasn't heard of this villain before would be forgiven. When you think of the most fearsome villains, specifically the villains of Captain Marvel, otherwise known as Shazam, you may not first think about the 7-inch long sentient worm from Venus known as Mr. Mind. This diabolically evil mind-controlling worm, after the events of Infinite Crisis, would cocoon himself and then emerge as a massive monstrosity capable of manipulating reality, consuming universes, and traveling through time and space. He was described as, quote, eating years and events from this universe's history, altering the Earth with every flap of his giant wings. It took a combined effort from Booster Gold, Supernova, and Skeets to defeat Mr. Mind by trapping him inside Skeets' shell, which was fortified by the Suspendium. Then, Booster Gold threw Skeets through time with the help of Supernova to the day that he was first discovered on Earth by Dr. Sivana, and then he's trapped in a time loop forever. So they didn't actually end him or defeat him, they just trapped him. This all-powerful, mind-controlling 7-inch long worm. And there you have it. Hope you guys enjoyed watching on Top 10 Nerd today. I'm your host, Adam Andrews. I will catch you all on the Flippy Flop. Until then, stay safe and peace out, nerds.